following discussion is not necessarily the views of all involved. The goal is to start open and honest discussion in the Christian worldview. Like all things, weigh what you hear with what you know and join us in our pursuit for the truth. Enjoy the podcast.
Can I pose a proposition?
No.
Guy opens the door. The prophet of God is in your living room.
Show me your hottest kid.
He went crazy cuckoo with the schizo.
I don't know if we're allowed to say that.
All right, I'd like to welcome everyone to the Second Rate Saints podcast. I'm one of your, hosts here, Caleb. To my left is...
I'm Joshua, and to my left is...
I'm Joel, and to my left, I am Colton. And to my left,
It's me, Caleb, gone full circle. We have the full crew here.
yeah,
We're just missing Stuart, as per norm.
always.
Stuart might be able to join us pretty soon. He's going
Really?
to be super excited. Hopefully.
Heck yeah.
We'll see. You know, pieces moving. Joel, do we do anything on the internet?
And
Yeah.
we hype up Stuart all the time.
Yeah, we are big We're Stewart heads here on the Second Rate Saint podcast. Yeah, we do. We are on Instagram. We're on Twitter. We've got a website, Second Rate Saints. If you want to email us, we've got secondраtesaints@gmail.com. Yeah, there's plenty of ways to interact. If you've listened to any of our content that comes out weekly and had a thought, a comment, or a concern, we'd really appreciate you shooting us a message. And one of those things that we always like to hear comments on is our What Have You Read section, which is a little bit of a segment we do to begin the episode. I'm going to say, Caleb, what have you read?
A couple things, but this time I have read J.I. Packer's Heritage of Anglican Theology.
Oh, yeah.
Don't try
Really,
to say
Anglican books. You really...
There's a pattern. Have you noticed
man,
this?
I've never even
Compelling
heard.
read.
Have you noticed anything?
I've noticed Anglicanism.
It is exactly as it sounds. Other than the heritage, mix that with history instead of heritage. The history of Anglican theology. It's exactly what it is. Yeah, so he just recounts the origins of Anglicanism, how that develops, different strands, how they interacted with each other. It's like 360 pages long.
Okay, so it's not the smallest read.
No, but it's pretty easy to read.
Okay.
The biggest difference is going to be he doesn't explain theological ideas very well. Not just very well, like it's not up to him. He's more like, anyway, so these people believed this in contrast to these people. And unless you know what this is, you're kind of like, okay. You're like, anyway, so the Puritans were superlapsarians, and the more Catholic leaning were infralapsarianists, and blah, 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 blah. And you just move on, and you're like, that's cool.
I'm going to admit, I
Awesome.
don't know what those mean.
Yeah. So it might require a little bit of a Google search every now and then. Or, you know,
What is supralapsarian? Or whatever you said
it's
it was?
predestination stuff. Okay. Is the fall actively part of God's plan? Type stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
I'm going to out myself and probably call myself a superlapsarian. But anyway.
Well, that's a really safe stance to take because nobody knows what that means.
Just use big theological terms and nobody knows
And
what
if
you're
you're
talking
super,
about.
that's awesome.
I think I'm a super as well, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is, it is.
You go to a
That
Reformed
it is
church.
part of his plan?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But
It's
before
not
the
like
fall.
it's not like reactionary. It's like this is all premeditated and planned, and you get into the whole Calvinistic. Not just Calvin deals with this, but like every theological system has to deal with this to a greater or lesser degree. Infralapsarianism normally doesn't claim one way or the other. They're just like, we're not going to say. We can make definitive claims about other theological stuff. There isn't enough information to say one way or the other.
Right.
Regardless, plenty of that in the book. So he's retelling the development of Anglican theology, and in contrast to different groups, when it, developed here, went back here, this kind of resurged back.
Does
that
he
type
just
of stuff.
presuppose you already know Anglican current theology?
No,
Okay.
not really. There's some of that, but I don't think it's too bad. I don't think you would have to be super familiar with Anglicanism itself to read the book, although you might need to be familiar with theology.
So,
I mean, that's true of Packer's work a lot of times. Sorry, I cut you off.
oh no.
Trying to bring down the set there.
Yeah, I tried to break everything. With the book, now I know that Anglicanism's gone through a bit of a rough patch recently, in that the majority of Anglicanism is not really deemed Christian as much.
They're not Orthodox.
Anymore. Yeah, and now this
Small
Orthodox.
Orthodox.
Yeah, and now this Orthodox Anglicanism has kind of broken away from it as the
He doesn't get into it.
he doesn't.
He lays the groundwork to say, and this is where some people go wrong.
Right.
Anyway, moving on.
Well, I was wondering, based on the book, does it it says it's a heritage, a history kind of thing?
Yeah.
How far does it go to the present if it doesn't talk
Like
about
the
that?
50s,
Oh, okay.
right? So modern Anglican stuff is not really covered.
Yeah, that could
Which
kinda
might
get
be a
its
bit of
own
a
book.
shame.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it probably deserves to be its own thing. So if you know absolutely nothing about the Church of England, Anglicanism, it's a great resource. Although it might require either you know theology already or you have a computer handy to Google some stuff.
You say it's an easy read. Is it an easy read for like a theologian or like an easy read for like the average layman to pick up and read?
In English, it's easy.
I see.
Yes.
Okay.
In terms of words and grammar, Packer's
Okay.
good at making. He's a good writer, although sometimes his concepts and stuff are more complex.
Right.
His quippy jokes are fun.
Yes, his humor bleeds through every now and then.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty good, and he's pretty good about being he knows he's biased, and every now and then he'll make his note of anyway, so I agree with these people obviously because they're right, but moving
Right.
okay.
Yeah.
Was it a good read?
Yeah, I'll put it up on the book reviews. I think I'm going to give it a 3.5.
Out of 5?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
Josh.
yes, Josh.
Cover.
Cover review.
Oh, I mean,
What
that's
color is it?
Don't make fun of my disability live.
You make fun of it more than we do.
You're right. I'm gonna say it's red.
Wrong. Red out of 5?
It's red out of 5.
The cover I like because it keeps to that
It's actually
old
green.
traditional style while being new and clean, because it's part of that new. They've redone all of J.I. Packer's stuff in the last 5 years with new.
Crossway's
Yeah.
publishing them all. There's just
great.
they look super nice.
I've got Keeping in Step with the Spirit. Their Concise Theology one is nice. It's a dark blue. Might be purple.
4 to 5.
I'm hearing
4 to 5. I'm hearing
No,
4
no,
to 5.
I'm hearing a lot of words. I'm not hearing any numbers.
I'm describing the cover
Uh-huh.
to the audience so that
they
when
can
I
Google
say it's 4 out of 5,
Yeah, the green
means something
cover,
to them.
right? The green cover.
Hey, Colton, who invited you?
Wow. Maybe
All right,
I
I'll
should
see
put this
myself.
book away.
Anyway,
It's causing
No,
strife among
it's 4 out of
brothers.
5.
Cool.
Yeah.
yeah, I agree.
4 out of
That's the
5
first
what?
time I've agreed with you on the cover.
4 to 5 halos.
Yes. 4 to 5. 4 to 5.
Check out our
Second
website.
Anyway.
I mean, half a halo isn't really anything, though, is it?
So Josh, before we get into Samuel,
Bent metal.
it's been so long since we've done Samuel. There's also a lot of Samuel that we've already covered. Can you give us a review up to where we are today?
Yes.
Chapters 1 to 14.
1 to 14. Let me flip to it so I'm looking at it. So we started off a series on Samuel, which starts off with the birth of Samuel through his family, his parents Eli and Hannah, who go to the temple because they're praying because Hannah can't have a child. And that's a super big problem. And there's this comparison between Eli, the high priest there, and Elimelech, Samuel's father, both fathers of families. And what ends up happening is you see Eli, who's the high priest, who's supposed to be good, is not great. He's not a good man. And he doesn't parent well, and he doesn't lead well. He knows better, but he doesn't do anything about
His
it.
sons are stealing the glory of God.
His sons are stealing the glory of God. Whereas
taking a little fat.
Elimelech's son is Samuel, who ends up becoming a great priest and prophet guided by God.
Yep.
And you see them compared. And then you see the sons compared, Samuel and Phineas and Hophni. And that goes into, eventually you see the culmination of God's judgment on Eli's family with the Ark of the Covenant scenario where they die. And that family line dies out, except for the one nephew. And then it transitions into Israel wants a king.
Hold on. You missed the very good, the super fun side quest.
Yeah, Ark side quest. Okay, he goes and gives a cancer to like 3 cities, and then the box walks itself home. And
Are you going into why it's radioactive now?
no, I didn't say why it was radioactive. I just said that it was radioactive. Sorry.
I thought that's
Dead
where I was
behind the
going.
eyes.
Yeah.
Caleb, you asked for this. You specifically said, "Hey, what about that radioactive side quest with Dagon where he kills another god?"
Anyway, it's super cool, very fun. You should reread that. Josh,
Yes.
what happens? They go like, "Hey, king, maybe."
Yes. So they want a king. God is. They go to Samuel.
Check
and they're
behind the barrels.
Yeah,
They
he's
wanna-
in with the luggage.
guys, I'm trying to get through this for the audience. They can't follow 3 people.
We're also trying to get through this.
He was a head above everyone else, which is why you could see him behind the barrels.
So the people of Israel go to Samuel because they want a king, because Israel doesn't have a king, and they're still in this broken up, shattered tribal society that they're left with after Judges. They're at the end of that timeline. And so the people, the leaders of Israel, go to Samuel, the prophet, the speaker to God. They say, "Hey, tell God we want a king." Samuel says to God, "Hey, they want a king." God says, "Give them a king. Don't worry, they're rejecting me. They're not rejecting you. Give them a king anyways." And so Samuel gets led by God to go find this kid named Saul, who's taller than everybody else.
Well, not yet. The goats happen first.
Yeah. And he
what?
goes to this party where there's, at a mountain in Shiloh, where
You're going to describe
he
it
is
party,
waiting.
eh? Not like a.
He's waiting
a
for
feast?
Saul. It's his anointment dinner. Saul doesn't know he's going there. Saul, it jumps to him, and he's just working at his farm with his family, and he gets his dad's donkeys go away. Him and the servant go and try to find this donkey.
Is it donkeys or goats?
The donkey
It is donkeys.
in their search for the donkey, they arrive at the party.
Really?
Yeah. And as he's going up, Samuel comes down. He says, "Hey, God's making you king," kisses him on the forehead, pours oil over his head, and then God tells Saul what he has to do to be king.
Doesn't he show up at the party? They go. He's like, "Hey, you should join us." And they're like, "Okay." And then they join. Then he's like, "I should send you home. Your donkeys are okay. Anyway, send your servant ahead." And he's okay.
So didn't we say something in that episode where we're like, did he steal the donkeys?
Well, that's one of the things later.
Yeah.
In the thing where his kingship's announced to everyone.
Yeah.
Right. And that's when Saul's hiding among the luggage. And that's one of the reasons why he's kind of portrayed in like this whole passive thing. When he's announcing that this is the king.
Yeah.
Samuel makes a big deal out of going, "Hey, can anyone remember a charge? Hey, can anyone say that I've done something wrong? I haven't even taken anybody's donkeys. Hey, and it's like interesting." So there's like a weird transactional, like now Saul is the leader.
Yeah. Saul. So you see this comparison between this transition from Samuel, the last judge, the prophet of God, the high priest, into a king, the first monarch of Israel.
As a and it's described pretty radically. Like all of your reality will change completely, and the nation will change completely.
And taxes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's setting up Saul. So he gets military victory. He does stuff that's right. He prophesies. He's like a prophet. He's filled with the
He
Spirit.
unifies Israel.
He unifies Israel. He potentially defeats Satan.
Okay.
That we went over in the episode. So you got to go listen to that. It's great. He doesn't actually defeat Satan. He just defeats a guy called Snake.
And
Typology.
Satan never came back ever again.
Exactly. And then Saul goes to battle and he kind of flusters. He falls apart. He's not operating properly. He's making rash decisions. He's trying to be good, but it's always in these half attempts. And this comparison grows between Saul and his son Jonathan. And Jonathan gets up early in the morning. He gets his servant. They attack the enemy camp from behind without telling anybody. It's this wonderful story, this comparison between Saul's timidness, inability, and unreliance on God, whereas Jonathan's like, God's going to protect us, God's going to do this, God's going to do that, we're going to go to war.
And honey plays a big part.
Yeah.
You'll have to go listen to that.
Yeah.
Don't hear anything.
And the next chapter follows this situation where Jonathan, without knowing, disobeys a rash command from his father.
Yep.
And he's proven to be just. He didn't do anything wrong. It's fine. God said it's okay. But you see this comparison between this rashness, this unwise king.
Yeah,
and
almost this fart. Not farcical. That's the wrong word.
Fart king.
This piety that doesn't really have any trust behind it.
He's trying to do what he thinks is right, but doesn't do what's necessary to do what's right.
Yeah.
He's going in the right direction.
Himself.
He's going to he tries to do what's right to please God and blah blah blah, but he doesn't go to God. He doesn't go to Samuel.
He always takes it into his own hands.
Yeah. Whereas Jonathan is always giving over to God. And then we see that finally in this chapter, we get into chapter 15 and 16, and we see David comes onto the scene for the first time, which we learn is the next king of Israel. And we see in these two chapters a comparison between Saul and David, similar to Eli and Elimelech, Elimelech's son and Eli, Samuel and Saul, Saul and Jonathan. And it's this comparisons of what is faithfulness and righteousness and obedience.
And now we're going to compare Saul and David.
Yeah.
Now we glazed over the last little bit, and so if you were reading your Bible recently and you went through 1 Samuel, like there was stuff they didn't talk about. We did. You can go back and listen to those episodes, and there's some fun stuff in there. But yeah, chapter 15 and 16. That's what we're going to go through.
Caleb, take us away.
Yeah, I guess I'll read it. What am I reading, Josh? What translation is this? NIV.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Samuel said to Saul, I am the one the Lord sent to anoint you king over his people Israel. So listen now to the message from the Lord. This is what the Lord Almighty says. I will punish the Amalekites for what they did to Israel when they waylaid them as they came up from Egypt. Go now, attack the Amalekites and totally destroy all that belongs to them. Do not spare them. Put to death men and women, children and infants, cattle and sheep, camels and donkeys. So Saul, here, I'm going to get to the point. I'm going to get to verse 8.
Yeah.
I think it's 8. The part where he starts to deviate from the plan. No, I'll stop there.
Yeah.
Okay, so he's given a commandment. There's some chinks in his armor and his like good kingship that's been showing through, but he's been given a command by Samuel, which is really from the Lord.
Yeah, and it's not a command that's similar to the rest. It kind of is this ban on these people, but the Amalekites were written in Deuteronomy 25 to be destroyed because they kept attacking stragglers. In one of the books I read on it, they almost like a wolf attacked stray sheep. So that they'd pick off out stragglers on the caravan that was Israel as they came from Egypt to the Promised Land.
Yeah, they were attacking.
And because of that,
they were attacking a people without a nation, without an army.
Yeah,
easy pickings.
Yeah.
And after all of the law is written in Deuteronomy, they are the nation that's explicitly mentioned is I will blot his name out of the record of heaven.
It seems like an elevation of the Canaanite nations even, right? Like, yeah, you're supposed to devote all those to destruction, which when you read that, like destroy men, women, children, all their animals, all that kind of stuff, you're reading, excuse me, you're getting flashbacks from Joshua, right? It was like, oh, devote all things to destruction for the Lord.
Yeah.
And turn over to him.
During the Judges period, each tribe was supposed to do that for the region that they held, that they were given, but they didn't. And now it's as commanded by God in that original command to Saul about being the king. You now have to deliver my people because you're me to them. You now have to deliver my people. You have to fight their enemies, and you have to make them prosper. Right.
Well, something that is interesting about Deuteronomy 25 is it says that these people will be destroyed after they take the promised land.
Yes. And so and Josh reiterates that command.
Yes.
And he tells them to go do that now. Now that because Joshua took the land, took parts of each of the tribes and said, now you have to finish the conquest of your area. And alongside that was the command, kill the Amalekites, kill the Rephaim, kill the...
Well, I don't think it's just kill. Devote to destruction.
Yeah, completely annihilate.
Also, well, not completely annihilate, but like who are they devoting them to? It's for God. It's very specifically, they're not doing it just to destroy. They're doing it to devote to destruction.
I mean,
It's straight up holy
this
war.
one...
yeah, it's holy wars.
But
yeah.
this nation specifically is to completely destroy them in Deuteronomy.
Oh, no, it still means to completely destroy them, but on the terms of God's plan.
Yeah.
Has nothing to do with just going to war with nations.
And there's a specific reason
but this
given.
one specifically.
There's a specific reason given in that when Abraham went to the land, originally when he was called to Canaan, and God told him that this would be your land, he said, but not yet. The people here still have 400 years of chance to be forgiven. They can still come to me. But when they don't, and your descendants come back, they will destroy them all.
Yeah, it kind of gives a peek into sovereignty there.
Yeah, and what he's saying is that they have it, and then God tells the Israelites when they're about to enter Egypt, when they're about to enter Israel for the first time, the descendants of Abraham, he says, you're to devote these people to destruction because they have had their chance for forgiveness. They have rejected me. They're sacrificing children on altars to evil gods, sexually immoral, all these other things. They're evil in all that they do. This is their judgment. It isn't a natural disaster. It isn't fire from heaven. It's you.
So
that's why it's not just like it's a specific type of holy war. It's located to this area.
I'm gonna say it now before someone in the comments does. I don't think this is the time we're going to address the conquest of Canaan in its those are people. How does that work in like an apologetic type setting?
Yeah.
And how should we read that? What does that mean? What does that reflect theologically? We will
How's it
do an
apply
episode.
today?
Yeah, we will do an episode on that. I can't promise when it'll come out. If I'm honest with our audience, I have 2 books that I know of on my shelf on the topic that I need to read. But yeah, we're not going to address that topic right here. However, I want to address that topic.
Does
in
John
the future.
Walton write on that? I think he does.
There's a
Probably.
compiled work that I know Longman III. What's his
Tremper
name?
Longman?
Tremper Longman III writes, and I think it's a compiled book. I think Walton might be in that.
Yeah.
Regardless, yeah.
Interesting.
But now Saul is being commanded to do the unfinished work that the Israelites did not obey God in doing. And specifically about the Amalekites, because they were a specific case, because they were not in the list.
Yeah.
They were outside of the region.
Yeah.
And they attacked Israel
And now,
on their way.
Yeah.
And so God added them to the list.
Yeah.
So you think there's a tie there between God being like, well, this is what I did for you. I protected you against them. Now it's your king's job to protect you against. So you think it's God handing over the keys a little bit?
Well, he's specific. Not handing over the keys. It's the king as that mediator, by God's own command onto him in that first address where God specifically talks to Saul. Here, I'll just go to it.
So Saul is the first pope. Is that what you're saying there, Joel?
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's exactly what was in my mind. I associate the king of God's people with the Pope, Caleb.
And as Josh is saying, when he is crowned king, he is to protect the people, but it also comes with like the standing army and all that.
Yeah.
And taxes.
In Texas. I don't know. I love the rise of Saul. I find it really hard to see the downfall of Saul because to me it doesn't make sense. The evil spirit stuff. I
sympathize with Saul probably more than I'm supposed to.
And here's
That's
the other
thing.
problem.
I used to.
You don't?
Not really.
How come?
Kind of. I think it's more just these episodes. The more I've looked into it, and the more that Josh and I have talked about it, I'm starting to see that there's a bit of, yeah, he is kind of thrust into this role. Whatever. He doesn't really do a good job on his own.
Stop just describing me, okay? Anyway, Josh, what do you got for us?
Okay, fair enough.
Sorry, I'm trying to. This is 1 Samuel 10. In the first few verses, Samuel takes the flask of oil, poured it on his head, and kissed him, and said, "Has not the Lord anointed you to be prince over his people Israel? You shall reign over the people of the Lord, and you shall save them from the hand of their surrounding enemies." And there was more.
So that's pretty explicit, like what he.
But I
Yeah.
think that has more to do with
And
the
then-
Philistines. I don't think this sounds more like wrath than
And
salvation.
then, well, no, what I mean is that
For the
it's
Amalekites?
his role as king, like the him being commanded to go and do this, right? Is Israel is now that they're a kingdom, right? Is the extension of God's action into the world.
Yeah, Deuteronomy's whole
Yeah.
vassal nation stuff.
And so with the whole ethic in the ancient Near East of the kings were gods or the sons of gods, God's his representation of the king, of that idea, his change, his alteration of that idea in the culture was that the king would
Act on behalf of the king.
and
Or
the
the God?
king would act on behalf of God.
Yeah.
The same way that
the
Moses
prophet would be the voice of God. The
say that-
king would be
right,
the
hand.
justice
yeah.
I see.
of God. Yeah.
And so he's supposed to protect Israel's people and he's supposed to fight God's enemies.
Yeah.
And so this is him in fighting the Philistines. He's protecting Israel's land from the enemies that are invading and are in the land. And by attacking the Amalekites, he's acting as God's judgment sword.
Yes.
And so,
Yeah.
sword of judgment. That's a better way of saying that.
Sword of judgment.
Sword of
Do
judgment.
And
not-
so when he acts in priestly roles, which we'll get into, is that a violation of his station then?
Which
What?
is, you could go that way, but I would say like just go the way the text says, which is he wasn't supposed to because God said Samuel would do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
But there is definitely that connection there. There's still that bifurcation of
Yeah.
the roles that the prophet priest and the king prophet play.
Yeah, I think that the Book of Kings and Chronicles get more Kings get into that when whatever his name is sacrifices in the temple. I can't remember which king it is, but
Yeah.
Well, priest kings would have been like culturally the norm.
Yeah.
Which is why, to me, like the more I read on ancient Near East culture, the more I'm like, it's kind of, it seems almost like syncretism. It would be a reason that Saul would think he's even allowed to be offering sacrifices in the first place. Right, that it would have been an influence of outside culture.
But
He is
you-
the king, he's allowed to do whatever.
Kind of, but I think also it's back to the text, verse 4. So Saul summoned the men and mustered them at Tel-Amah, 200,000 foot soldiers and 10,000 from Judah. Saul went to the city of Alimech and set ambush in the ravine. Then he said to the Kenites, "Go away, leave the Amalekites, so that I do not destroy you along with them. For you showed kindness to all the Israelites when they came up out of Egypt." So the Kenites moved away from the Amalekites. Good move. Then Saul attacked the Amalekites all the way from Hava to Shur, near the eastern boundary of Egypt. He took Agag, king of the Amalekites, alive, and all of his people he totally destroyed to the sword. But Saul and the army spared Agag and the best of the sheep and cattle, the fatted calves and lambs, everything that was good. These they were unwilling to destroy completely. But everything that was despised and weak, they totally destroyed. That's up to verse 9. I don't think that's what God told him to do.
No.
yeah, that's not.
Yeah, so much of Samuel is just, and he told them not to, and then immediately they did.
Well,
It's kind of like Judges.
But,
Yeah, it's kind of
but
the whole
not-
Bible.
He's only really messed up twice so far. He's only messed up with the rash vow and not going to God properly in the fight. In the previous war with the Philistines, which Jonathan
and
takes
the
over.
sacrifice.
But those are like kind of like foolish things.
Yeah.
This is an explicit not doing
Yes.
what God told him to do.
Yes.
And also explicitly him in the role of king, right? Like it's not just. I guess he was in the vow as well. Maybe I'm stepping out and saying that, but
Now he does obey God in going to war, and he does defeat them.
Yeah, it's what happens
They
after.
also defeat them in a ravine, which to me is like, if you're a fortified city, how do you defeat somebody in a ravine?
I think
push him.
one of our teachers made this really good point. After God destroys Jericho's walls, when they try to hold into the city, in the rest of the fights, none of the nations fight Israel inside their cities.
That is true.
That's right. I remember this now.
Yeah,
Yeah, because AI is like, let's not do that again, or let's not follow that plan.
or you see all of the kings muster up in war
the
and then
Jerusalem
fight.
coalition. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you see this this basically like they see that God can decimate walls, which would usually extend a war to like 5-10 years with a city, and then he just twists the fighting system. The normal way of battle with Israel changes for everybody else.
Colton, who are the Kenites? Give me a bio on the Kenites, please.
Kind of mid.
The sons of Ken.
Sons of Ken. Interesting.
No, the Kenites probably are the family of the Midianites, or at least associated with the family of the Midianites.
And we know about that from Jethro.
Yeah, sorry, not Jericho, Jethro. Jethro is the father-in-law of Moses, who is described as both the Midianite in Exodus, but also as a Kenite in other parts of the Bible.
So they were not part of those oppressive,
Well, I think there's something cool there because aren't the Kenites the one who build Jerusalem, which is then taken over by Solomon? Isn't that right?
David.
Yeah, Jerusalem was a Kenite city before. David takes it.
Yeah.
But I think I'm right in saying that, which
I
is kind of
don't
cool
remember.
because
Or is it
The
the
Google.
Jebusites?
I think it's Jebusites.
I think
it
it's
Jebusites?
Jebusites. Yeah.
I think so. I think that's where it gets its.
big. Okay, well then I'm gonna go from a different angle here.
So the Jebusites.
Yeah, no, the Midianites would still be
Good.
pretty close relations to Abraham that existed outside of Egypt while they were in exile.
Yes.
The whole thing. Or while they were in slavery. Yeah.
Which is why Jethro, it kind of alludes that Jethro worships God
Yeah.
in a weird way.
It's not explicitly said.
Jebusites,
It's kind of like
Is it Jebusites?
Yeah.
My goodness.
Sorry, man.
Sorry.
I feel like it was only yesterday.
the siege of Jerusalem in 70 AD
honestly,
or before.
There's very frequent
Which-
sieges
which
on
ones?
Jerusalem.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So back to the passage. He takes Agag, the king, and he takes the plunder. The two things you would do as a king is you would probably take the leader of another nation to either as like a power move to other nations, send a signal.
Or to show it to your own people.
Yeah, look what I've done. I have the king of another nation under my control. And then taking the plunder is super important because when you, in those times, when you would go and take over a nation, there were sacrifices, but also when you go to war, it takes a lot of resources. It takes a lot of resources to go to war, and a lot of these people, as the reward for going to war, a lot of the soldiers get to take stuff with them back.
Plunder.
Yes, it's looting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
call
that's how you would pay them.
I call it a good wage.
Yeah. Because that's an easy way to pay them is if you live, you get the stuff. So
We'll get into Saul's possible motivations when he starts giving some excuses. We'll cover that then.
Yep. And whether or not they're justified.
Either way, the text there does make a big distinction. They spared the fatted, the good,
Yep.
what was good, and then they devoted to destruction the weak.
Yeah.
and
Devoted to the Lord.
and it says worthless. What's interesting is worthless is the word ra, which is also the word for evil. And so they kept the good and left the worthless. They kept the tov, the word for good,
Yeah.
which is the same as there's a big parallel in Old Testament stories of that comparison.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and even in the law where you give the best to God and you like as sacrifice kind of thing.
Yeah.
Which might be what Saul was doing, but we'll get into it.
Mm-hmm.
So Samuel gets wind of this,
Mm-hmm.
but God tells him. When the word of the Lord came to Samuel, this is starting in verse 10. When the word of the Lord came to Samuel, then the word of the Lord came to Samuel. Third time's a charm. I regret that I have made Saul king, because he has turned away from me and has not carried out my instructions. Samuel was angry, and he cried out to the Lord all that night. Early in the morning, Samuel got up and went to meet Saul, but he was told, Saul has gone to Carmel. There he has set up a monument in his own honor and has turned and gone down to Gilgal. Little comment on there before we get the big Saul-Samuel clash.
Samuel's a good guy.
Yes.
The rest of the book portrayed that really well as we got over it, but just the fact that the Lord sends a little private message to Samuel,
PM.
Where he's just like, hey, this, like, I told you Saul was going to go bad. I just wanted to confirm that it has gone bad.
This is it.
This is it.
Robert Alter, who does a couple Old Testament translations, kind of commentary stuff, and some stuff in hermeneutics, kind of. He makes kind of a big deal out of how Samuel's displeasure is depicted vaguely. And it starts off angry, and then, as we'll get into it in chapter 16, then he asks Samuel right at the beginning, he's like, why are you moping around about Saul? And so it appears as though Saul was like kind of maybe emotionally invested in like, okay, so there's this different system than the judges now. It's not just going to be this bad cycle of horrible, we run away from God, everything goes bad, and then judge comes to deliverance, and we run away from God, it goes bad, cycle of just perpetual sin. And then it's, oh, hey, the king, it's good, things are going to be different, and nope.
Yep. And Samuel cried to the Lord all night. That's such an odd intro, like insert into that passage. Like, it's not just that he's angry. It's that he's like, he's so sad that it's happening.
Seems like he's pained that the cycle's continuing.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's the big part of it, is that he...
Well, because he saw Eli rule this way. Right. He saw Eli's sons rule this way.
He's seeing his sons.
He's seeing his sons do it. And now he's seeing the new king that was anointed by God.
The Spirit of God rushed on him, and he was able to unify all the people.
Yeah.
He has the Spirit of God on him.
Yeah. It's the like...
But we also know that Samuel doesn't believe that God's fickle-minded, as he talks about later. It's not like he's angry at God for changing his mind.
No, he's angry at the situation.
Yeah.
It's just like, why is this continuing?
But there's that interesting note that like with Job and like with Psalm 88, where in his distress he's going to God.
Yes.
Like that's where he cries. He doesn't cry alone. He doesn't cry at his home. He cries with the Lord all night. That's just wild.
Yeah, it depends why he's angry. And like you said, the book is sort of vague about it. But
Robert Alter makes it into a big deal. I don't think it's a big deal, but it is kind of
Victor
funny
Hamilton
that he
does sort of as well.
Yeah,
And
which is funny because I like both of them.
We talked about this before, but we're not going to get too deep into it. But there is that phrase, I regret that I have made Saul king. The last time that phrase was used was in Noah. Like, this is a harsh response from God.
Yeah, it's the exact same verbiage.
Yeah, it's the exact same verbiage. And God's response to that was flooding the earth.
Yeah, I think it's a depiction of displeasure and of sin, I think, a bit.
But it is so much more. There's so much more. It is so much more when you use that phrase.
Yeah.
That it's somehow total. in its response.
Yeah, the immutable God regrets.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's the same thing of the God who knows everything says, I never knew you when you die.
Yeah.
It's like what does that mean?
I know you can't do that, but like, what does that mean about me?
Yeah.
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 And so,
Yeah, go.
yeah. Confrontation. It's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, before that, it is also interesting that it's just like, anyway, so he made his own monument in his honor on Mount Carmel, and now he's gone down to Gilgal. What? Why would he do that?
Well, no. We saw this before with Eli's sons. Mm-hmm. They're stealing my glory. Mm-hmm. They're consuming my glory. They're doing it for themselves rather than for me.
And the same fat narrative even continues on.
Yeah.
The fatted calf is not given to God for destruction. It's retained.
Yeah.
Yeah. Only the worthless. Yeah.
He's doing the exact same thing.
Verse 13. When Samuel reached him, Saul said, "Bless the Lord, bless you. I have carried out the Lord's instructions."
Mm-hmm.
But Samuel said, "What then is this bleating of sheep in my ears? What is this lowing of cattle that I hear?" Saul answered, "The soldiers brought them up from the Amalekites. They spared the best of the sheep and the cattle to sacrifice to the Lord your God. Mm-hmm. But we totally destroyed the rest." That doesn't sound like that. We totally did, bro.
Yeah.
No, we totally destroyed the rest. And Samuel's response, "Enough."
I like that Samuel is like kind of confronted with, "Hey, we killed everything," and he goes, "Well, then what are all these? What do you mean you
I
killed
hear
everything?
stuff, yeah.
I can still hear them."
Then what is the? It's as if he has his hand up to his ear and he's like leaning in. He's just. Then what's the noise I hear?
Yeah, and a sheep walks in front of him as he's talking. Yeah.
It seems like the most human interaction. It literally is. So we did the thing, and then he looks as a sheep crosses. Clearly not. No. Here's the reason why. But we totally did everything else. We followed the instruction to the T, save for the part that we didn't. And then Samuel's response in 16, "Enough," Samuel said to Saul. "Let me tell you what the Lord has said to me last night." Just kind of like a little bit of backhand. Just shut up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to him sparing them for sacrifice, technically speaking, in the law that is allowed.
But here's the thing.
Except that's not what the command Samuel gave Saul was.
Mm-hmm. Also, is it him? Is it the troops that kind of got carried away and he didn't really lead the troops properly?
Yep.
Some commentators go back and forth.
And Saul specifies his own words. The men took them. I didn't command to take them for sacrifice.
Yeah, well, he was afraid of them specifically. Yeah.
No, but that idea of the men were the ones that took the animals. I didn't take them in the purpose of doing a sacrifice.
But just earlier it says, even if not the animals, egg.
Yes.
Saul spares egg.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That one is kind of unless he's also planning to sacrifice Agag. Yeah. Agag is how whatever I've heard the YouVersion Bible, the guy pronounced it. I don't know if that's right. I just like how he says it.
Agag.
Agag.
I think it would be Agag, right?
Yeah.
Probably. I like saying egg.
Agag.
Anyways, so do you think that him sparing the king, God already spared this king once, or like this nation? He's already spared them once. So I don't know. That ties in somewhere, right? Like where he's taking God's place, essentially, judging that they can live for just a little bit longer.
Well,
he destroys all the people.
Well, most
except for the king.
Except for
Yeah.
Well, it kind of like lightly gets into what we talked about in the previous episodes.
But that's interesting.
It's the almost false piety kind of way where he doesn't like the Lord your God. There's that repeat of the wording.
Yeah. And the thing is too, it makes me wonder, not to get into biblical criticism, just break down here. Is that what he said, or is that the narrator saying, anyway, so this is where Saul is not following along in the same path as Samuel?
Mhm.
He is out of line. He is not part of actually following Yahweh.
Well, in what Victor P. Hamilton gets into in the book a little bit, Handbook on the Historical Books, which I read partially for this, is that yes, he does these things, yes, whatever, and why exactly does he disobey if he's following it perfectly, kind of thing, if he's still doing everything properly? Because, like I said, in the law, you can set aside things that are dedicated for God, for the Levites, or for sacrifice to God, because it's just another roundabout way of doing the same thing.
Devoted.
Yeah.
To it.
The problem is it's a misapplication. Like it's like a
Well,
loophole thing.
It wouldn't be here because the issue is that Samuel explicitly tells Saul not to spare anyone. It like to destroy everyone, not spare anything. And it seems, at least from what I can see, is that is the part that Saul breaks. Not because he finds these loopholes, although they are loopholes to look more pious, probably, is that he does he rejects Samuel's specific instruction to destroy everything, not just dedicate to God, but to destroy it, to put it to death.
So verse 16, I'll reread it. Enough, Samuel said to Saul. Let me tell you what the Lord told me last night. Tell me, Saul replied. Samuel said, although you were once small in your own eyes, did you not become the head of the tribes of Israel? The Lord anointed you king over Israel. And he sent you on a mission, saying, go and completely destroy those wicked people, the Amalekites. Wage war against them until you have wiped them out. Why did you not obey the Lord? Why did you pounce on the plunder and do evil in the eyes of the Lord? And Saul's response in verse 20, but I did obey the Lord, Saul said. I went on the mission the Lord assigned to me. I completely destroyed the Amalekites and brought back Agag, their king. The soldiers took the sheep and the cattle from the plunder, the best of what was devoted to God, in order to sacrifice them to the Lord your God at Gilgal. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
But Samuel replied, does the Lord delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as much as in obeying the Lord? To obey is better than sacrifice, and to heed is better than the fat of rams. For rebellion is like the sin of divinization, and arrogance like the evil of idolatry. Because you have rejected the word of the Lord, he has rejected you as king.
Bam. You're out.
Yep.
Next player.
Yep.
Man, that's. I like how he starts it off with like, "Hey, you remember that you didn't make you king, right? Like you remember that
You
it
were
was
brought from
nothing you
nothing."
did. Yeah.
Yeah. Remember, you didn't think very big of yourself. You hid amongst the luggage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You tried to not be king.
Now you're making monuments of yourself on Mount Carmel? Come on.
Yeah.
It's like God gave you everything, but you couldn't give God everything, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's interesting.
And it's that specification of Saul tries to argue, I'm allowed, what I'm doing is specified in the law, which means he learned from the last time in reading the law, which was the lesson he didn't learn previously.
I don't know. I'm not super satisfied with those answers because it presupposes that he should know what he's doing. And I think he's just making excuses. I don't think that he's innocent in it.
No.
Like
I don't
as
think
if
he's innocent.
Or he's a fool by it.
No. I don't think he's innocent. I mean that because the sin isn't in the point that I'm making is not that he sinned. Let me start over. The last thing he did was he didn't read. Part of the king's rules in Deuteronomy and Leviticus is that he has to read the law constantly and the commands of what he's supposed to do. It's supposed to have a specific copy himself, so that he could read it constantly. And in the last case where he went wrong, it specifies that he didn't understand. He didn't know. He wasn't keeping up. Whereas in this one, he specifically reads out the law that he's doing, but he's still using now that law as an excuse.
Yes.
And so it's in that same vein of it's 80%. It's half measures. You didn't do the thing you were commanded to do, like Saul says. You didn't go the way. And he's using laws and rules, previous commands, and trying to find a way out of what he did wrong when he's faced with it.
Well, it's almost like the reason he spared. We'll get into it. The reason he spared the best of the best is so that if he does get caught, then he can sacrifice. He can sacrifice them and be like, "Look, see, I did the thing anyways." Because he does give the excuse later that he did it for the men rather than for God, because he feared the men, and not because he wanted to sacrifice them to God. That's the first
real
justification.
reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's trying to weasel his way out.
Yeah.
Right. But now that he's confronted, hey, the Lord has rejected you as king.
Yep.
Verse 24, then Saul said to Samuel, I have sinned. I have violated the Lord's command and your instruction. I was afraid of the men, and so I gave in to them. Now I beg you, forgive my sin and come back with me, so that I may worship the Lord. But Samuel said to him, I will not go back with you. You have rejected the word of the Lord, and the Lord has rejected you as king over Israel.
Yep.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm going to keep going because it's still kind of in the same. As Samuel turned to leave, Saul caught hold of the hem of his robe and he tore it. Samuel said to him, the Lord has torn the kingdom of Israel from you today and has given it to one of your neighbors, to one better than you. He who is the glory of Israel does not lie or change his mind, for he is not a human being that he should change his mind. So Saul replied, I have sinned, but please honor me before the elders of my people and before Israel. Come back with me so that I may worship the Lord your God. So Samuel went back with Saul, and Saul worshiped the Lord.
Interesting.
It almost... So there's two instances where Saul asked for grace, right? Samuel says no. Saul goes, hey, let us worship together. Come back with me. Let us worship. And the first time, there's almost like a genuine, I'll worship with you. I will return so that it's our God again. But the second time, it maintains that your God type.
It's the
tone.
It's the way Saul is talking is like a doomed man begging for one more chance.
Yeah.
Yes. It also possibly, at least to me, betrays the reason for keeping the people in the first place and the things he'd done before.
Absolutely.
It's for the attention of the people and the elders for honor rather than because that's the excuse it gives, is that so that I may look good in front of the people, basically, and I may be honored in front of the people rather than because I want to be reconciled to God.
He specifies, right? He specifies, I was afraid of the men, right? And in the last passage, he does the sacrifice because he sees his army leaving and the army is waiting there that he has to attack. They're about to invade. And so he's afraid that he's going to lose because he's losing his men. And so he makes the sacrifice because Samuel's late, his men are leaving because they're terrified. And he's like, even if we do this, I don't think we're going to win, because he feared his men in the situation more than God.
Yeah.
And there's that whole idea of the fear of the Lord is the beginning of the wisdom. Be a God-fearer, not a fear of man. Look for the glory from God, not for the glory from men. Yeah. And Saul's making the wrong choice.
Yeah. I don't even know if I buy that Saul actually did fear the men as much as it was like another excuse. I don't know. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Well, even if he wants the glory, the fear he might be talking about is the fear of losing the honor if I don't do this. Like there's a coupling of the fear and the glory from men. The fear of men and the glory of men, from men, praise from men, right? Who do you want praise from? Do you want it from men or God?
I think there's also there's a shifting of from excuse to excuse, from worry to worry. It feels, I don't know, at least reminiscent of moments of weakness when it's like you don't even really know the reason of why. You justify sin when it's exposed, you ask for grace, but like kind of only because it's costing you now,
Yeah.
right? You try to justify it, right? But
Yeah.
but what's the real motivation? Who knows anymore? It's all obfuscated.
Yeah.
It's just sin.
Yeah. It's scrambling
Yeah.
in darkness.
Very lighthearted.
Yeah.
Anyway, so now all things are happy. Then Samuel said, verse 32. Then Samuel said, "Bring me Agag, king of the Amalekites." Agag came to him in chains, and he thought, "Surely the bitterness of death is past."
Smug face.
Ooh, this is
Yeah.
But Samuel said, "As your swords made women childless, so will your mother be childless among women." Dope line.
It's a good one.
Horrifying.
Yeah,
Cool.
And
You've
Samuel,
killed all these men. Now you're going to be dead for your mum.
Wild. Game of Thrones esque, you know.
Yeah.
and Samuel put Agag to death before the Lord at Gilgal. Then Samuel left for for Ramah, but Saul went up to his home in Gilgal of Saul. Until the day Samuel died, he did not go to see Saul again, though Saul mourned for him, and the Lord regretted that he had made Saul king over Israel.
Regret here is like sorry or literally to repent.
Yeah. But the Old Testament uses that word rather
Yes.
loosely. It's worth pointing out. It's, I guess that's one of the reasons why I always feel sympathy for Saul, because he lacks the strength to follow God's word, right? I don't know.
But so do I.
Yeah, but
Right?
but so
that's
do
the
I.
kind
And
of
it's
the-
just
yeah.
like but he throws himself upon the mercy of God. But hey, man, no.
But it's
It's like, but so do I.
but it's along the same lines of 1 John of he's not repenting. When he goes to God, he's begging for moments. He's begging for the punishment to not come. He's not begging for a chance to be better.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's the difference. He's continuing in sin. He's not repenting.
Yeah. But I think especially after judgment has been cast, those two things look so similar.
Yeah.
They feel so similar even.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, I don't know. I guess that's, I don't know.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
I think it is a little different with Saul. Because yes, you have that, but to be fair, almost everybody has gone through that.
Do we
A
see
failure
Saul
and
as a
then having to
tragic
choose.
character?
I don't see Saul as a tragic character. No,
I do.
I see him because
I
he's
used
the
to.
first. He's the first king. No people in Israel have not had to be in his situation. The only one is Moses and Joshua, and those were for short periods of time, for a specific goal, and then their job was over. Or in Moses' case, he died. But Saul's the first king. We all go like David is the prototype, or like the first, like really good king, and it's from his line. But Saul is the test case. They're barely even a king. Like his house, his
Well, they're
palace,
still extremely tribal.
yeah, his palace is still a tent, and by the end of his reign, it's probably a house the size of a normal 2-bedroom house. Like
he has to go all the way to Gibeah to go to his house.
yeah, yeah. Like and he sees the world around him.
He always gives me the impression of a extremely passive person, reactionary in most ways. Action is not his thing. And when he does act, he does it wrong. And so he chooses to be passive.
Right.
He didn't want the job. It was thrusted upon him. And the response is he should, like God's command to Job, put your pants on, stand up, let's do this. Like, you've been called to action. Let's go.
I think,
right?
Yeah. I think
But he's not.
Yeah. I think the reason I see Saul is less of a, because I'm not going to be cold hearted and just say, yeah, he just did bad and whatever. Because, yeah, he's human. He's done bad. But it seems that when he does fail, yes, they seem fairly minor. And like he is forgiven kind of at times for the things. Like he's allowed to continue as king. It's this one that kind of makes him not king anymore. So that the things he does are for himself. He coerces a situation to work out for his favor to make himself look either more pious or like the king that he's supposed to be, stuff like that. And he doesn't actually trust God.
Yes, but as we'll get in with David, the only difference between Saul and David is what they do after they sin.
I disagree. I disagree with that. Saul does,
maybe. Hang on.
Saul does not trust in God before doing something.
Yes, but when
Unlike
David
Jonathan
sins,
or
he
David.
doesn't trust God. He's
when he sins,
constantly
But Saul's not described at all as doing something good for God.
Yeah,
except
the beginning of his life.
Yeah.
The beginning of his kingdom. He does good all the time.
When the Spirit rushes upon him and he brings out Israel as one man to fight against the serpent
it's
in the
when
wilderness.
he sins.
Oh, yeah. That's true.
It's
That's
when
true.
he sins, like I mentioned before, it's instead of that continuing to sin because he's asking for mercy to just for one more moment, he's not asking for mercy to repent. Whereas David immediately goes to God after the sin is faced against him.
Right.
And so the only real difference is, as God specifies, where his heart is directed.
There might just be also a personal aspect of the religion regarding Samuel versus David, right? David immediately interprets things very personally in his religious life. Whereas Saul is far more, okay, we do the sacrifice, then this happens.
Yes.
The religion is exterior. It's the cultural thing. That's why Samuel's here. But with Saul, with Samuel, with David, it is always, that is his God.
Yes.
Yeah. And if he fails him, he still failed his God. It's not your God or the people's God. Josh, do you want to take over for chapter 16?
Chapter 16. So this is now, David is coming onto the scene, and we are seeing now the second monarch get brought up. God has rejected Saul, and he's now bringing up David. The Lord said to Samuel, "How long will you grieve over Saul, since I have rejected him from being king over Israel? Fill your horn with oil and go. I will send you to Jesse the Bethlehemite, for I have provided for myself a king among his sons." And Samuel said, "How can I go? Saul hears that he will kill me." And the Lord said, "Take a heifer with you and say, I have come to sacrifice to the Lord, and invite Jesse to the sacrifice, and I will show you what you shall do. And you shall anoint for me him whom I declare to you." Samuel did what the Lord commanded and came to Bethlehem. The elders of the city came to meet him, trembling, and said, "Do you come peaceably?" And he said, "Peaceably. I have come to sacrifice to the Lord. Consecrate yourselves and come with me to sacrifice." He consecrated Jesse and his sons and invited them to the sacrifice.
It is kind of interesting that this is just a low moment in Israel's history, right?
Yeah.
Especially during everything that's happening. And then Samuel's just, "Oh man, this sucks." God's like, "Hey, come on. I got a plan. Let's go. Come on."
Yeah.
Next step.
I told you this was going to happen. Let's go.
Next step.
Yeah.
So why is it that the people of the town were so afraid of Samuel? Did they think that some plague was going to come upon them?
No, I think because they were now entering a place where Samuel had rejected the king of Israel as the king, and the people know that now Samuel is acting as the voice of God in judgment. And so they're afraid that if he comes to the town, it's because they've done something, or because something that the king has done in that town, or
Yeah.
yeah.
Sure, but to the people, they don't know that Saul's not king anymore
Didn't Samuel just hack
because
Agag
he went
into
with
bits?
Saul.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Samuel has transitioned in his approach in life.
Yeah. In verse the previous chapter, verse 33 in the ESV, I assume that's what you're holding. Does it say anything about that? It doesn't in the NIV.
What did he hack him?
Yes, and Samuel hacked Agag to pieces before the Lord.
Yeah, it doesn't say that in the NIV.
Well, no, and part of the reason for that is because to go to your sacrifice point, that's what you do.
Well, yeah, I don't think Samuel, it does say that he did kill him before the Lord, which is similar wording to
And
killing
devoting
animals
to
before the Lord.
destruction.
Regardless,
But
Samuel's scary.
Yes.
yes,
He's old.
which, yeah,
And he's the prophet. Like he speaks for God. When he crowned Saul in front of the people, there was that whole thing.
yep,
It was not a fun event.
yeah, and
The
the
Lord-
stuff with the rain.
He specifically tells the people, "You rejected God. This is on you."
Yep.
Right? And so and then he just came from killing Agag, rejecting the king. Saul's probably not happy. As he said, Saul's probably going to try to kill me if he finds out.
Yeah.
So, yeah. People are on edge. This is not a good time in Israel.
Yeah.
The king's making bad choices.
Yeah, but they don't know that God has rejected Saul. Because
Because they went back together.
because they went back together, and they honored.
There's no
they honored
proof
him
that they
before the
don't know
elders.
yet. Also,
Well, no,
if-
it is because they go back together,
That's the whole idea. Is they've been
so they
honored
can
in
honor before the elders.
the elders.
Mhm.
He maintains the position in the eyes and like the function of Israel.
Yeah,
But
and they worship God together.
Fair enough.
is there?
Yes. Yeah, so they go and they get ready for the sacrifice and they go to the sacrifice. And Jesse's amongst them, potentially because he's one of the elders in the town, because he's got a big family and he's important. We did an episode on Ruth.
We did.
People read the end of there. Jesse is a descendant of Boaz.
Mhm.
And so that's where we're at, is now we're seeing Ruth, what we did before, connect into the Samuel story.
Yeah.
About how God was already preparing for David
Mhm.
before Saul was king, before any of the people here were alive. And so we get into this next part. When they came, he looked on Eliab and thought, surely the Lord's anointed is before him. And the Lord said to Samuel, do not look on his appearance or on the height of his stature, for I have rejected him. For the Lord sees not as man sees. Man looks on the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. Then Jesse called Abinadab and made him pass before Samuel. And he said, neither has the Lord chosen this one. Then Jesse made Shammah pass by. And he said, neither has the Lord chosen this one. And Jesse had 7 of his sons pass before Samuel. And Samuel said to Jesse, the Lord has not chosen these. Then Samuel said to Jesse, are all your sons here? And he said, there remains yet the youngest. But behold, he is keeping the sheep. And Samuel said to Jesse, send and get him, and he will not sit down till he comes here. And he
We're all
went.
going to stand here until he comes.
Yeah. And he sent and brought him in. Now he was ruddy and had beautiful eyes and was handsome. And the Lord said, arise, anoint him, for this is he. Then Samuel took the horn of oil, anointed him in the midst of his brothers, and the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon David from that day forward. And Samuel rose up and went to Ramah.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing that happened with
Guy opens the door. The prophet of God is in your living room and just pours oil on your head.
You're gonna
Show
be
me
king.
your hottest kid.
Oh.
I mean, it is kind of interesting that it's like, hey, I'm here to do a sacrifice. Where are we going to do the sacrifice? No, I need to see all your kids. Okay, is there another one? Yeah, I guess so.
Why are you not?
You're king now. What? Imagine being Jesse.
Well, it's another dupe, right? It's just like Saul's going to go find his donkey, right? And then Saul's like, I didn't steal anyone's donkey. Samuel's like, I didn't steal anyone's donkey, right? And he like kind of like Saul goes on this journey and gets duped into becoming king, like on this
a little
path. And then Samuel, the same thing. Hey, we're going to make a sacrifice. Where? in your living room. Just wait a moment.
Yeah, everyone has
See
to
all your
stand. Yeah. There is one thing. Well, there's quite a few. There's a lot happening here, but do you think the reason why the 7 were shown before Samuel, like, what's the significance for it? But is it to test Samuel to see if he'll pick one of them and listen to God? Because why show the 7 and be like, okay, yeah, but there's another one that's away.
Probably was too young.
Well, yeah, but no. I understand. So is it a literal, or is there some kind of meaning behind it, rather than just this is just what happened? Why wouldn't Jesse bring his other son in?
He specifically goes to Samuel makes a judgment himself for one of the few times where you see him go,
This is it.
puts his opinion into the mix. Because with the whole thing with Saul, when the people are like, we want a king, blah, 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 Samuel doesn't talk. He's just saying what the God said to the people, and then the people said to God. And this time he's like, oh, this guy's going to be king. And it's specifically for the reason Saul was chosen, because he's tall and old and looks like a king.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think Samuel is making the same mistake. We're seeing later on in the text that Samuel saw the same thing in Saul for why he should be king.
Yep.
Originally, because he was taller than everybody else. He was physically imposing. He looked like a king should. Right. And you didn't see that earlier on in the text, but now we're seeing, he thought the same thing about a king. And so he's specifically showing Samuel, no, this guy, the guy I chose that nobody asked for, is going to be way different.
Sure. Yeah.
Than
it's just reinforcing that God looks at the heart.
Yeah. And in rereading the text, I do admit I had they're all standing and getting ready for the sacrifice and all that. And he's introducing his sons one by one, leading them through the door to come in. It's the way that I've had to explain to me, usually by youth pastors or whatever, is that Samuel lines them up, judges them. And it's like, there's one missing. They seem to be just walking through the door.
Well, he does also just show up at Jesse's house and is like, all right, here we go.
Yeah.
Like, okay, where's all your kids? I'll go get them.
Yep.
And then they come in one by one. Nope. Is there anybody left? Yeah, there's one more left.
Yeah. He's the youngest out there.
Yeah. Do you think, like, it specifies that he's beautiful, but it specifies also that his eyes are beautiful.
And he's healthy.
Yeah, but it specifies his eyes, right? Do you think there's a comparison there between Saul and David, where before it was all about what people saw and
eyes
were looking at when they saw Saul versus
my
David's
version
eyes?
doesn't talk about eyes.
Yeah, so it's the same thing with Leah, where it says she has soft eyes, where it's not saying that she's blind. It's a description of beauty. Eyes were a description of beauty in that time. So sometimes, like I think in here, when it describes beauty, it's describing their eyes.
Right.
So as a marker of beauty, yeah, he was ruddy and had beautiful eyes and was handsome.
Okay.
He's a mountain man.
Yes.
Yeah.
But do you think there's like a comparative thing there where it's with Saul, it was what people saw in him versus what he sees?
That's already a theme being played with.
Yeah.
So sure. I'd have to think about it more and do a little bit more research, but it's already a theme that's being played with there.
Yeah. He's the youngest. It's following the same path of like Jacob and Isaac.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. Do you think there's anything to be said about him inverting the blessing from the oldest to the youngest?
I think it's a pattern that God does of picking the younger, not the one that people think should go.
Subversion.
Well, to show
God was
that
doing it before Disney.
Yes.
Yeah, there you go. To show that man's wisdom is not the same as God's wisdom. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
Yep. And along the lines of like that this guy is king because I've chosen him, not because he's ready or tall or strong or
I'm sure you could do a whole deep dive into whether or not it's to subvert like the cultural norms of those who inherit and those who deserve, rather than those who God chooses best for the job. Because if you pick the oldest, it's the person who will lead the family and will inherit it. Whereas if you pick a younger one, it's one of the lesser sons, that kind of thing. And so God isn't choosing the person based off of inheritance or what they deserve in the culture kind of thing, but the person he chooses.
Yep.
It's just the whole
Instead.
God sees the heart.
Yeah. Yeah.
And God knows he beat up a bear recently.
Yes.
And a lion.
And a lion.
And so it specifies at the end, and the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon David from that day forward. Cool.
That's
Same as Saul.
Kind of. This one indicates a continual thing, which is not emphasized with Saul. But Saul and David interact.
Yes.
Without Saul knowing that he's future king.
Yes. Now the Spirit of the Lord departed from Saul.
like a wacky sitcom.
Yeah. It's actually an interesting like
Parallel.
thing here where the Spirit of the Lord came upon David, and then it does say that it had departed from Saul, but it doesn't say when specifically.
Yeah. And a harmful spirit from the Lord tormented him.
Yes.
And Saul's servant said to him, "Behold, now a harmful spirit from God is tormenting you. Let our Lord now command your servants who are before you to seek out a man who is skillful in playing the lyre. And when the harmful spirit from God is upon you, he will play it and you will be well."
What does that mean? That's so frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
What is an evil spirit from the Lord?
Depression.
Is it just sad?
Schizophrenia.
It's the big sad.
Maybe.
Okay,
I've seen people say schizophrenia.
Really?
Yeah, I disagree with it, but I've heard of people say
Can
it.
I pose a
No.
proposition? Or Joel, you were about to say something. You go first.
I was just going to say I'm super resistant to people just throwing mental health stuff into the Bible.
Yeah.
I
Or
think
even
it's
physical health.
I think it's the same thing as Pharaoh and Romans 1, where it's God is giving him over to his evil heart.
But here's the thing. The text would indicate more so God sent a spirit that messes with them.
Yes.
But you're right. It is abated simply by music.
Yes.
I have also seen people talk about, because I know this isn't what the script says, but a lot of people do hold to this idea, is that Saul went crazy when the Spirit of God departed from him, kind of thing. I don't know if you guys have heard that.
No, I've heard that, yeah.
Yeah.
But then went crazy. Like, again, if you say it's schizophrenia, that is incredibly reductive and doesn't reflect what the text says. It's
Well,
just...
schizophrenia maybe, but is that idea, could that be part of what they're talking about here? Is that because the Spirit of God left him, he goes insane?
I think there also should be a distinction before we start making claims like this.
Sure.
There's a distinction of what the text says and how the Israelites understood it versus us trying to recreate and read into it to see what quote unquote actually happened.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because they're not going to go, he went crazy cuckoo with the schizo. No.
I don't know if we're allowed to say that.
Oh, no. We need a little bit of comedy in here, all right?
Yeah.
That's not comedy, man.
So, well, why don't we finish just up to chapter 17, like finish chapter 16, and then we'll probably get more on this.
We'll get canceled.
So Saul said to the servants, "Provide me a man who can play well and bring him to me." One of the young men answered, "Behold, I have seen a son of Jesse, the Bethlehemite, who is skillful in playing, a man of valor, a man of war, prudent in speech, and a man of good presence, and the Lord is with him." Therefore, Saul sent messengers to Jesse and said, "Send me David, your son, who is with the sheep." And Jesse took a donkey laden with bread and a skin of wine and a young goat and sent them to David, his son, to Saul. David came to Saul and entered his service, and Saul loved him greatly, and he became his armor bearer. And Saul sent to Jesse, saying, "Let David remain in my service, for he has found favor in my sight." And whenever the harmful spirit from the God was upon Saul, David took the lyre and played it with his hand. So Saul was refreshed with it well, and the harmful spirit departed from him. Okay, so here's the thing. My first thoughts is that's cool. David's qualifications already are awesome.
Here's the thing.
I envision him playing Freebird.
Here's the thing. So
He's playing
it specifies that
Hallelujah,
the spirit
obviously.
is taken from him and a harmful spirit is given to him, but then the spirit comes back. through David. And so the Spirit, yes, it leaves Saul, but it's constantly present around him in David.
Do you think that's where the misconception that he went crazy because the Spirit left him comes from? Is that
I think
because
this-
it's the Spirit's back through the music that's kind of like abating?
I think this
Well, what I
justifies
mean is-
charismatic worship services.
No, what I mean
I
what
agree.
I mean is that when we read these things of like the Lord, takes away the Spirit from him or does this act of judgment, mercy is around the corner. It's like right beside it, waiting. He doesn't leave Saul completely hanging.
Sure.
The Spirit is in another man and acting in Saul's benefit to heal him and protect him.
Yep.
He's his armor bearer.
That's true. And even from a
Right.
narrative perspective, it's showing that like why David feels for Saul and stuff later on,
Yeah.
and stuff, and why not why, but it shows that when David spares the king, like
Yeah.
Saul, and doesn't go and kill him in his sleep, and
Yeah.
all of these things, that it's built on this idea that from this moment that he was with him this whole time, kind of
Yeah.
thing,
And
mercy was already kind of given.
there's a
Is that what you're
specification.
saying?
He's been rejected as king, but he hasn't been rejected as God's anointed.
Yes.
And so there's still purpose for Saul while he's alive. He's still one of God's chosen to act properly.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Okay. Also, we're going to get into it. Chapter 17, which I'm so excited for in David Goliath. David's already mentioned to be a man of war. Also, he's his
Yeah.
armor bearer. Wouldn't he know that his armor already doesn't fit him when he puts it on in chapter 17? So I think there's some dischronology going on.
Yeah.
But that's Old Testament books and books from any
Or-
ancient Near Eastern context to begin with. And what is he doing at
Does
his
it say-
father's place, looking after sheep when he has to go to the army? If he's Saul's armor bearer, wouldn't he be with Saul bearing the armor at the battle spot?
Unless they live near each other.
Yeah. My translation says he is an armor bearer, implying that he might not have been the only one, or he wasn't for the whole time.
Either way, it's still, I don't know. I think dischronology.
He could just be delivering cheese to his brothers at war. Like
but
from
he's a proven
VeggieTales.
man of war?
Yeah, that's crazy to me.
Not
But
yet.
it does get into like, hey, was he really a soldier? Are these just war stories that were told when he became king?
Well, I think
That's going to get into it.
I think chapter 17 comes in between the anointing and Saul's asking for him.
Yeah.
So I think chapter 17 may be in there as a narrative to show, hey, this is the type of man that David is. But sorry, that's next time. I just kind of wanted to mention that here because there might be someone who goes, how does that line up? We'll get into it more next time.
Yeah. And it might be for that comparison of the rejection of Saul and the anointing of David. That might be why it's disjointed for that narrative means. Because you already get a hint. David is different than Saul. Like the way other people talk about him immediately is already inspiring something else than the way Saul was described when he was a kid.
Yeah.
He's tall, he's a good guy, he's gonna do great things. But it was because he was tall. Or his dad was a fairly rich man.
Yeah. And he was what the people desired as an ideal king.
Oh, he's good looking too.
Yeah.
But so is David.
Yeah, but he's short, rugged looking,
David-
mountain man.
And Saul is passive in his whole becoming a king and being king. But David is he's the leader of the sheep, not a farmer. He's actively participating in the king's court, in healing him.
I
don't know.
I would not start
think-
prescribing him being an active player yet.
I think David and Goliath goes more into that.
I think
than
he
this
becomes
does.
active
Yes.
in that.
But what I mean, not in that he's he's an act. It's not that he's active in participating in God's call. He's actually doing things.
But Saul does stuff. I don't think the contrast goes there yet. I think that contrast will grow. I don't think it's
I don't think that the only things that are described in this book are a contrast between Saul and David.
Well, I don't think he's making that argument either. But anyway, Joel, this has gone on for a long time. Can we?
What?
I'm asking you to end it, please.
Oh, really? We're gonna end the episode? Okay. Well, what have we talked about so far? No, I want to summarize a little bit, so we're not like. Anyways, that's about all I want to talk about, and we're leaving.
Saul is a bad dude.
I don't know.
David is a less bad dude.
I would stick with him as a tragic character for me, but I mean, a tragedy at his own hand, right? Yeah. He's not quite a villain, but he's not a good man either.
He's the man of the Old Testament.
Sure.
Like every judge before him.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's representative of Israel needing a king. Or wanting a king is actually a better way to say it. And David is more representative of Israel needing a king, which I think we'll get into next time. Yeah, this has been Second Rate Saints. Thanks for listening. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, things you believe that we should cover, then just send us an email at secondраtesaints@gmail.com, or you can check us out on our Twitter, our Instagram, or what else? Our website? secondratesaints.com. Yeah. Thanks for listening thus far, and have a good week.
Just end it.